My next guest is the ranking minority member of the Jobs and Economic Growth, Finance and Policy Committee, which just heard this bill, and a lawmaker from Minneapolis, Senator Bobby Joe Champion. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Some people have said that this Uniform Labor Standards Act is a proxy war between the rights of workers and the rights of employers. What do you think?
I think that it is a war between whether local municipalities should have the right to determine what's best for their residents and the state. When you think about it in real time, this is an opportunity for local municipalities to decide what's best for their people, and they're the closest to their people in order to determine what is best for them. And let's say the local residents don't agree with what their city council is doing. They have an opportunity by which to make their voice heard by voting or going to their person and saying, I like something or I don't like something. When you think in terms of this preemption notion and bringing it on a state level, then you want me, a person who is from the great city of Minneapolis, to help make a decision about someone in northern Minnesota. Even though I enjoy going north and I enjoy the summers up there, I don't necessarily enjoy the winters. But let me say, I shouldn't be the person making that decision for them, because all of our cities are very unique and different, and they require different things. So a one-size-fits-all sort of approach, I don't think is the best approach. And so I see the preemption bill as a way to undermine local municipalities, and I really do believe that local governments are in the best position to determine what's best for their residents.
Those who are in favor of the bill have argued that allowing cities to enact their own labor laws creates a logistical, administrative, and human resources nightmare, particularly for businesses that work across city borders or around the state. What are your thoughts on those business challenges? You know,
I think that we have to do everything in balance, right? I do think that we need to think about those logistical challenges in real time, but I also think we need to consider residents and what they need and what they want. When we think in terms of the capacity for business owners to determine what's best and how they navigate through that terrain, I believe that we have the capacity to do that, and we do it on a regular basis. So here in this instance is no different. We have to consider these things. And one of the things that I was impressed by yesterday when Councilmember Glidden testified, she talked about the various steps and paces that the city of Minneapolis took in order to determine what is in the best interest of business, what's in the best interest of citizens and workers, and they took all that information and aggregated it together in order to come up with an ordinance that they believe that would be helpful and productive. So I do believe that we have the capacity by which to do that, and I think we have to recognize that the people who are in the best place to determine what's in the best interest of all those parties, city council members, local government.
Well, more than 28 states already have uniform labor laws, so more than half. They say it keeps the playing field level and creates a consistent marketplace. Consistency is often good for business. So is it possible that allowing a patchwork of laws is letting government pick winners and losers?
I don't think it's a notion of picking winners and losers. One of the things that was brought to light yesterday by one of the professors, a retired professor from Mitchell Hamlin School of Law, is the whole notion that usually when states, for an example, take a look at preemption law, it usually is attached with policy that people can react to in real time. But when you think in terms of what this bill failed to do, it fails to articulate any policies at all. And in fact, one of the things that Councilmember Glidden, who is with the Minneapolis City Council, talked about is the fact that if the state had reacted in real time some time ago around these important issues, then the city of Minneapolis would not have taken this matter in their own hands. So we have a legislature that continues to articulate these broad policy notions that they want to carve out without articulating with clarity or at all what the law should be, right? And so when we think in terms of a patchwork, that would be true if there, or at least it would be arguable if there were patchwork and then there was a proposal put forth that says, hey, here's how we're going to remedy this problem. But to say it's a problem and say I want to be the one to speak to the problem but don't put any proposals on the table is irresponsible from my vantage point. And so it's a misuse of the notion of preemption.
Well, let's say you're a restaurant owner in Minneapolis and you simply cannot afford to pay your workers $15 an hour and give them paid time off. It's just not conceivable. So to save your business, you move to Robbinsdale or some other suburb that doesn't have those same labor laws. Doesn't this cost Minneapolis tax revenue and jobs?
I would say that that is something that the city of Minneapolis would have to think about deeply. Because I do believe that you want to make sure that your businesses have a competitive edge, and you don't want them to be at a competitive deficit, right? Or disadvantage. So I do think you have to think about these issues. And remember, I started this conversation around balance and taking the right approach to weigh all these important issues and all these important notions. And I believe that you just articulated some of the things that the city of Minneapolis or any city would have to think about. And in fact, let's not forget that every particular city in the state of Minnesota signed a letter that says that they oppose Senate File 580, right? So cities really understand their responsibility. They really understand their commitment to their residents. They really understand all the things that they need to balance, and probably most importantly, they welcome the challenge and welcome the opportunity. That's why they ran for office, right? And so for me, and I started this earlier by saying a guy from the great city of Minneapolis, and I'm proud to be from the city of Minneapolis, should I be making a decision about Duluth? Should I be making a decision about the Northwest Corridor as to what's best for their residents? Isn't that the same argument when we were articulating with clarity the minimum wage, which I believe that we should have always argued about a livable wage, right? Herein lies the complexity of the challenges that are before us. And who's in the best place to do that? Local governments. I keep saying it because that is an underlining theme that I believe to be very important, and that's what's missing here in this conversation. So yes, the city of Minneapolis would have to balance all those things, as any city would have to balance those things, because they want to keep businesses there. They want to make sure employees are happy. They want to make sure that there's collective bargaining but between an employer and an employee. All those things are what we invite and we believe to be important as we wrestle with this issue. And that's why I think this preemption bill is premature, unfortunate, and it doesn't really speak to the underlying issues that it really should.
Senator Champion, I want to thank you so much for your perspective and for your time today.
Thank you so very much, and I like the fact that you're wearing purple. Go Vikings.